President Obama met with his Council on Jobs and Competitiveness today, a group made up almost entirely of business and corporate bigwigs, including both GE and Comcast CEOs. Hello, bosses who I don't know. This council is charged with giving the president advice on the economy, which they did today in the form of this 50-page report. Now, remember, this Jobs Council is a corporate America thing. These are the business people who the Republicans call the job creators, right? Only you might have noticed corporate America is not really creating any jobs right now. With unemployment stuck at over 9%, corporations are, as the Wall Street Journal put it recently, deciding to hoard cash instead of hiring anyone. Quote, corporations have a higher share of cash on their balance sheets than at any time in nearly half a century, as businesses build up buffers rather than invest in new plants or hiring. Corporations, in other words, have tons of money right now, but they are sitting on it as cash. They are not using it to hire American workers. It's not because they don't have any money or because they need to pay lower taxes. GE taxes? No, corporate America is not hiring because the economy sucks. Because there's no market here for anything that they're selling. So they're not hiring here. So if jobs aren't going to come as a gift to the nation from corporate America, what do these supposed big business corporate America job creators say needs to happen in order to get jobs back? Their #1 recommendation in their big report to the president today was infrastructure. Quote, the council wants to add its voice to a point every thoughtful group that's looked at the matter shouted from the rooftops. Repairing and modernizing our roads, bridges, tunnels, railways, ports, dams, schools, airports, transit, electric grids, water and wastewater systems, and expanding our broadband networks are classic twofers. They create jobs in the near term at a time when more than 1 million construction workers are out of work, and they promote long-term competitiveness by building a more productive economy. If Washington can agree on anything, it should be this, and it should be now. So says corporate America. And so, for the record, says the Chamber of Commerce. And so says labor. And so says the great majority of the public. And so says the great majority of all economists, both bearish and even those bullish. And so tonight in the United States Senate, there was a test vote on the Senate's version of President Obama's jobs bill with $175 billion, and that everybody agrees on it, infrastructure investment. Not a single Republican senator voted for the bill. Not one. Charlestown Bridge, how you doing, Scott Brown? Almost every single Democrat, and therefore a majority of the Senate, voted to move this bill forward, but the Republicans filibustered it. They are unanimously opposed. Joining us now is John Stanton, reporter for the Roll Call newspaper. John, thanks very much for your time tonight. It's nice to have you here.
It's good to be here.
Let's start with the exceptions to the rule. Which Democrats did not vote for this version of the jobs bill tonight?
Jim Webb and Ben Nelson from Nebraska did not vote for the bill.
Okay. And David Axelrod has been arguing in a memo to Democrats, but really to everybody today, that the policies in the Jobs Act are really popular. The bill itself is really popular and getting more so. He was saying Democrats who don't back it are making a political mistake. Why didn't that argument, why doesn't the polling on this appeal to guys like Jim Webb?
Well, I think partly it's because Webb is fairly conservative in sort of his fiscal policies, but, you know, with, like, say, Nelson and other Democrats that have opposed it, they really are looking at what happened in the election 2 years ago, and they're seeing there's sort of an echo effect. They see that the Tea Party, sort of the calls for deficit reduction, fiscal restraint, that kind of thing, as sort of the order of the day. And so they've sort of begun to triangulate towards the right and are voting with Republicans on things like this, particularly for folks like Ben Nelson, who's facing a very tough re-election next year. You can expect him to essentially vote with Republicans down the line on anything like this.
That said, even with Webb and Nelson defecting from the Democratic line here, it shouldn't overshadow the fact that Democrats actually did get almost all Democratic votes here, and they did in fact get a raw majority for the bill. If the Republicans hadn't filibustered it, it would have passed. Do you have any inkling in the Senate that Harry Reid and the Democrats might be thinking about that filibuster rule so they could pass things with a majority again?
No, I don't. I think, you know, there's been a lot of calls to that, obviously, and a lot of people on the progressive side of the world would definitely like to see that. But there were Democrats that voted for this bill, frankly, who would not have voted for it if they thought it was actually going to pass in the end, I think. You know, they felt like Harry Reid put a lot of pressure on them for this vote. It was a political point to show that 51 Democrats were willing to vote for it, that a simple majority of the Senate was willing to vote for it, but had no repercussions for them. If it was going to pass, I think you would have seen a fair number of Democrats actually eventually defect and vote with Republicans on it.
It is astonishing. I mean, Republicans can find unanimity on the most complicated issues in the world as long as it's bad for a Democrat. Democrats can't agree that the sky is up when they're standing. The president's saying tonight, John, that this isn't done. He clearly wants to campaign on the jobs bill. He says he wants to try to pass any part of it any way he can. What do you think happens next on this?
Well, I think that's what you're going to see. I mean, next week they're going to be doing appropriations bills, and there'll be a week off, and the Senate will come back to this probably in about 3 weeks. And what you're going to see between now and then is essentially, a political campaign run by the White House, by Senate Democrats, by House Republicans, continuing sort of this same fight that they've been having, frankly, since February or January of how do we move forward as a country, and not really trying to talk to each other but past each other to the voters, hoping to put enough pressure on the other guy to get them to cave as opposed to trying to find some sort of middle ground, which has traditionally been what we've done in this country, and they're really no longer trying to do that. It's mostly a game of who can yell at the other longer and louder at this point.
It's very depressing. John Stanton, reporter for Roll Call. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate having you here.
Anytime.
All right, Bill Maher.